Okay, my name is Rodney Bowen. I'm reading poems and extracts from poems of A.R.D. Fairburn. The first is Back Street. A girl comes out of a doorway in the morning with hair uncombed, treading with care on the damp bricks, picks up the milk, stares skyward with sleepy eyes, returns to the dewy steps, leaves with the closing of the door, silence under narrow eaves, the tragic scent of violets on the morning air, and jonquils thrust through the bare earth here and there. At 10 o'clock a woman comes out and leans against the wall, besides the fig tree, hung with washing, listens for the postman's whistle. Soon he passes, leaves no letters. She turns a shirt upon the barren tree and pads back to the house as ghost to tomb. No children since the first. The room, papered in stars and jubilee pictures, pasted over the mantel, spattered with fat. Up the street, the taxi drivers lounging in a knot besides the rank of shining cars discuss the speed of horses as mariners the stars in their courses. The next poem I'm reading is called One Race, One Flag. Smith, a refugee from the black country, suffers the insults of the foreman that his family may live in the discomfort to which they are accustomed. God, can I start that one again?
It's a tongue twister.
Sorry. Okay. Smith, a refugee from the black country, suffers the insults of the foreman that his family may live in the discomfort to which they are accustomed, with deductions by the Commissioner of Taxes. Smith has 4 sons. Hands in pocket, fronting chaos, limbs a ring bar tree, losing sap. Smith is an English immigrant. Consider the curious fate of the English immigrant. His wages were taken from him and exported to the colonies. Sated with ambience, gorged with deprivation, he followed them to be confronted on arrival with the ghost of his back wages, a load of debt, the bond of kinship, the heritage of empire. The next poem is Full Fathoms 5. He was such a curious lover of shells and the hallucinations of water that he could never return out of the sea without first having to settle a mermaid's bill. Groping along the sea bottom of the age, he discovered many particulars he did not care to speak about, even in the company of water diviners, things sad and unspeakable. Moss-covered skulls with bodies fluttering inside, with the unreality of specks moving before the eyes of a photograph. Trumpets tossed from the decks of ocean-going liners, eccentric starfish falling from impossible heavens, fretting on uncharted rocks. Still continents with trees and houses like a child drawing, and in every cupboard of the ocean, weary dolphins trapped in honey-coloured cobwebs, murmuring of the revolution, "Will you be long?" He was happy down there, under the frothing ship lanes, because nobody ever bothered him with statistics or talk of yet another dimension of the mind. And eventually and tragically, finding he could not drown, he submitted himself to the judgment of the desert and was devoured by man-eating ants with a rainbow of silence branching from his lips. The next poem is called Lines for a Rebel. Next poem is called Remembered Cowardice. Shapeless and soft with slime, I pictured him, that loathsome beast that stirred and slopped the brim and heaved his body through the brain-black mud, fouling the sweetness of my living blood, I gazed at the flowers that grew beside the pool and made them fairies, played the moonstruck fool with thoughts and sense, cast off the load of mind a dozen ways, all timorous and all blind. And then, with shame and agony grown bold, one day I fumbled in the ooze, took hold and, shuddering, dragged him from his watery lair and threw him on the sward and gasped for air. All that I saw, for the horror that had been, was a great fat bullfrog, sleek and grassy green, a comfortable beast with friendly eyes, who gasped and blinked at me in dumb surprise. Though time's black mountain overhangs the night, where she's engrossed in sleep, its shadow cannot bruise my love, so calm she lies. She dreams so deep. She is not hurt by what shall be. Death stands enchanted in her eyes, remote and lovely, a floating flower on a lily pool of sleep she lies. Dream deep, my love, as in the time when your sweet spirit was unborn. But rise up when the east is purple, and dress your hair for judgment's morn. And over here there's this one which is well known and well loved. Said the Queen to her fancy man at break of day, stroking his burden with soft fingertips, "There's nothing we can say or do will outlive my heart's last beat, the latest breath of your lips." And she sighed and picked a feather from bolster and puffed it in the air and watched it sail. The moments of our love are flakes of dream falling on a snow scene in a fairy tale. Then suddenly her eyes grew big and her body stiffened, and she cried with that voice she could find, "Who are you, tell me? You I have known and loved in my heart's deep marrow and in the bones of my mind." And that familiar animal from heaven, with whom she had mixed her soul and seed and breath, lifted his head and smiled and kissed her hair, and taking off his mask of love, was death. A farewell. What is there left to be said? There is nothing we could say, nothing at all to be done, to undo the time of day, no words to make the sun roll east or raise the dead. I loved you as I love life. The hand I stretched out to you, returning like Noah's dove, brought a new earth to you, till I was quick with love. But time sharpened his knife. Time smiles and whets his knife, and something has to come out quickly and be buried deep, not spoken or thought about, or remembered even in sleep. You must live. Get on with your life. Logos, Logos. When morning stood on the hills and the sun was golden in your hair, we roamed in the cloudless azure, lost with lark, there in the boundless world of light and air, lost in despair. We longed for the dark. But when the strokes of bell down through the midnight fell, my hand carved out your body from the rock of night, and all was well. Because I'd like to read that, because I'm sure it's a zer, isn't it? How do you say that word? Where is it now? Z-U-R-E?
Azure.
Azure. Can I say that? I said Azar, something like that. Lagos. When morning stood on the hills and the sun was gold in your hair, we roamed in the cloudlet azure, lost with your lark. There in the boundless world of light and air, lost in despair, we longed for the dark. But when the strokes of the bell down through the midnight fell, my hand carved out your body from the rock of night, and all was well. This one is called On an Intellectual. I don't know whether it's in touch with God or lost in cloud. I only know he talks too much and much too loud. Next one is Glum Summer, directed and dedicated to Frank Sargison. Ron, I'd say, what is it, Eth? He'd say. And then I'd say, Ron, and instead of answering, he'd just have a sort of faint grin on his face. Ron, I'd say, but I never could get further than just saying Ron. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't say it. Ron, I'd say, and he'd sort of grin, and sometimes I'd take his hand and hold it tight, and he'd let it stay in my hand. There he'd be in a faint grin on his face. Ron, I'd say. I'm all right, Eth, he'd say. I like it, Eth. And I think I go on to my last one. And this is the last poem I have, and it was written by A.R.D. Fairburn in my little black book, which when I stood at the top of the stairways leading out of the old Auckland Library about 1954, my request for a signature led to Fairburn writing this in my little black book. He said he'd go, stood and held the door, and then for 2 hours more stood and held the floor.